All right, let's dive in. This stack of articles you gave me about the future of higher ed
Yeah.
is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited to unpack it all with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got AI and academic support, the effectiveness of test optional admissions, family engagement's role in retention, even a look at those OPM contracts that seem to be on everyone's mind lately.
It's like you're trying to get a 360-degree view of all the forces shaping higher ed today, both for students and for the institutions themselves.
That's the goal. We're going to explore how AI could transform student success for the better, examine whether diversifying college admissions is actually working, and hopefully uncover some surprising stuff along the way. When you were going through these articles, what really jumped out at you?
Well, this article from Element 451, AI-driven academic support systems for student success, it really digs deep into the potential of AI to personalize learning and support students, but it goes way beyond just AI tutors.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I hear AI in education, I immediately picture those personalized learning platforms like Khan Academy or Coursera. They've been using AI for a while now to adjust coursework based on how someone's doing. But this article is suggesting that AI could go much further than that, right?
Absolutely. Imagine AI-powered academic advisors helping students map out their entire academic journey, or virtual assistants that can answer any question a student has about financial aid or campus resources 24/7.
Wow. Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Some researchers are even looking into how AI can analyze student data to identify those who might be struggling academically or personally.
That's incredible. It's almost like an early warning system to connect students with help before they even know they need it.
Right.
But I know a lot of people get concerned about data privacy when AI is involved. Does the article talk about that at all?
They do. Element 451 is very upfront about the ethical considerations. They really emphasize the importance of responsible data management and ensuring that human interaction stays a core part of education. It's about striking the right balance between using technology and preserving those human connections that make learning meaningful.
That makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't want to lose that personal touch. And speaking of making education more accessible, you also flagged this higher ed dive article, diversifying college admissions. Why test optional is not as effective as we hoped. It seems like going test optional was supposed to make things more fair, but this article suggests that it might not be that straightforward.
Right, and there's this really interesting study from SSP International that found that test optional policies might actually be putting first-generation and underrepresented students at a disadvantage. The idea is that even if these students have good test scores, they're less likely to submit them because of the cost of testing or barriers to access. So colleges might be missing out on a lot of talented students simply because they're not seeing those scores.
Wow, that's a pretty big unintended consequence. It almost makes you wonder if test-blind policies where scores aren't considered at all would be a better way to go.
Some people are definitely pushing for that, and it's a very complex issue without any easy solutions. It brings up a whole new set of questions about how colleges would evaluate applicants fairly and holistically without relying on those standardized test scores. It would require a major shift in how we think about admissions.
Definitely food for thought,
Yeah.
especially with more and more colleges going test optional. And while we're talking about big changes in higher ed, you also pulled a couple of articles on CRMs and OPMs. I have to admit, this is an area I'm not super familiar with.
It's a little bit behind the scenes, but it's becoming more and more important. So let's break it down a bit. First, there's enterprise-wide CRM for higher education, a complete guide from Element 451.
Okay.
A CRM, or customer relationship management system, is basically a software platform that helps colleges manage every interaction they have with a student from their initial interest all the way through to becoming an alumnus.
Okay, so it's about centralizing all of that student data and communication in one place. But what's the real benefit of that for the colleges?
Well, it's about streamlining the entire student experience, both for the students themselves and for the staff. A well-implemented CRM can personalize communication track student progress flag students who might need extra support and even automate a lot of administrative tasks.
So it's really about making things more efficient and effective.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about those OPMs? You mentioned they were a bit more controversial.
Yeah, OPMs, or online program management providers, are companies that help colleges launch and manage their online programs. They handle everything from developing courses and marketing to recruiting students and providing technical support. It can seem like a really attractive option for colleges that want to expand their online offerings quickly.
But I'm guessing there are some downsides.
Well, that's where the second article comes in. Which OPM contract terms should concern campus leaders and why? It's from UPCEA, and it's basically a huge warning sign for colleges thinking about partnering with an OPM. The contracts can be incredibly complex and often favor the OPM over the school.
So it's a buyer beware kind of situation.
Exactly. This article really gets into the nitty-gritty details of things like revenue sharing, data ownership, even academic control. It points out specific terms that colleges should watch out for and even gives examples of good, bad, and really ugly contract language.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So what's the main takeaway for colleges considering an OPM?
Do your homework. Don't sign anything without understanding all of the implications. Make sure your legal team, faculty, IT department, anyone who might be affected by this partnership is involved. And be ready to negotiate those terms and protect your institution's interests.
It sounds like good advice for any contract, really, but especially in this case where there's so much at stake as online learning continues to grow.
Absolutely. It's a very fast-changing world, and colleges need to be smart about how they navigate these partnerships. But speaking of online learning, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the broader value of higher education itself.
You're right. We've talked a lot about the how of higher ed, but not as much about the why. There's a lot of discussion these days about whether a college degree is even worth it anymore, especially with tuition costs going up and alternative paths like coding boot camps becoming more popular.
Right. But you included this great article from Carnegie making the case for why higher ed matters. That speaks to that.
Yeah.
It reminds us that a college education is about so much more than just learning job skills. It's about developing critical thinking communication skills, problem solving, a wider understanding of the world.
It's about becoming a well-rounded person who can contribute to society in a meaningful way.
Exactly. And this article makes a really compelling argument for why those qualities are even more important in a world that's changing so rapidly.
I also noticed the article mentioned the importance of engaging local communities and really owning the narrative about why higher ed is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Colleges need to do a better job of showcasing the impact they have on students' lives and the communities they serve. Sharing real-world success stories and demonstrating the value of a college degree in a way that connects with prospective students, their families, even policymakers.
It sounds like higher education is at a crossroads facing both serious challenges and exciting possibilities.
That's a great way to put it. It's a period of immense change and innovation with a real shift towards more student-centered approaches, personalized learning, and a greater emphasis on equity and access. And technology, when used thoughtfully and ethically, can really drive that progress.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's take a quick break and come back to dive into the rest of these sources. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. There's still a lot to explore. You know, as we've been talking about all these different pieces of higher education, I've noticed a theme that keeps coming up in a lot of these articles. Oh, I'm curious. What have you picked up on?
It's this idea of connection and how important it is in higher ed for both students and institutions.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We talked about that higher ed dive article that highlighted the importance of family engagement, especially for students from underrepresented backgrounds. Having that strong support network can make such a difference.
Exactly. But it's not just about family. You also included this really interesting piece from him, the importance of an alumni network.
Oh, yeah.
It makes the case that alumni networks aren't just good for a school's reputation. They can be a real driving force in marketing and even help graduates launch their careers.
So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. Engaged alumni build a strong reputation for the school, attracting more students who then become successful alumni themselves, boosting the school's standing even more. It's a great cycle. It really is. And I thought it was really interesting how the Hem article broke down how alumni networks can be used to provide social proof drive, organic traffic to the school, and even enhance career services. It's all about showcasing those real-world success stories and demonstrating the real value of a degree from that institution.
Right. That's way more powerful than just saying, come to our school, we have a great program.
Yeah.
Actually seeing what graduates have accomplished is so much more impactful for prospective students.
Absolutely. That kind of authenticity really resonates with people, especially these days when they're constantly bombarded with information. It helps them cut through all the noise and make a decision based on real evidence.
It's like they're not just selling a degree, they're selling a community and a network of support that comes with it. Which reminds me, didn't that Element 451 article about AI also touch on the idea of connection, even when it was talking about artificial intelligence?
You're exactly right. It might seem a little counterintuitive, but a lot of times the goal is to use AI to actually build a stronger sense of connection between students and their institutions.
Okay, I need an example. How does that actually work?
Well, think about those AI-powered academic advisors we were discussing earlier. By analyzing student data, those systems can provide personalized guidance and support that make students feel like their school really sees them and understands their individual needs.
So it's not just about crunching numbers, it's about using AI to make the whole learning experience more human-centered.
Exactly. And this is where those ethical considerations we talked about earlier come back into play. It's crucial to make sure that these AI systems are designed in a way that respects student privacy, promotes equity, and enhances the human element of education instead of trying to replace it.
It seems like we keep coming back to this idea of connection. Whether it's AI family engagement, alumni networks, or even the discussion about test optional admissions, it all points to strong connections being crucial to success in higher ed.
I totally agree. When you really think about it, learning is a social activity at its core. We learn best when we feel supported, engaged, and connected to a community of peers, mentors, and in some cases, even intelligent machines.
But building and maintaining those connections in a world that's increasingly digital and decentralized is a challenge.
It is, and that's exactly why it's so important for colleges and universities to be proactive about creating those opportunities for connection. It could be through online platforms, in-person events, mentorship programs, or even just taking a more personalized approach to communication.
And this is where technology can be such a valuable tool, right? Not to take the place of human interaction, but to facilitate and strengthen those connections.
Absolutely. Think about all the ways technology is already used to connect people. Social media platforms, video conferencing tools, online learning platforms, they can all be incredibly powerful tools for building communities and creating that sense of belonging.
It's like we're at this really interesting intersection of technology and human connection, and higher education is right in the middle of it all.
I think you've nailed it. It's such a dynamic time with so much change and opportunity, and it's going to be fascinating to see how these trends continue to develop in the coming years.
Before we move on to some final takeaways, there was one more article you pointed out that I wanted to talk about, how online learning opens up higher education to a broader spectrum of students. From the student. It feels like online learning is just such a big part of the higher ed conversation these days.
It really is. This article gets to the heart of why online learning has become such a force, and it's all about access. Online learning removes those geographic barriers, makes education more affordable, and gives students the flexibility to learn at their own pace and on their own schedule.
Yeah, it's really a game changer for people who wouldn't be able to attend a traditional brick-and-mortar college because of work commitments, family obligations, or even just because they live in a remote location.
Exactly. And as we know, the pandemic really accelerated this whole trend, pushing colleges to embrace online learning in ways they hadn't before.
But even with the rise of online learning, there are still challenges, right? Like how do you ensure quality control, maintain academic rigor, and prevent students from feeling isolated in that online environment?
You're absolutely right. The student article addresses those concerns head on.
Right.
They emphasize the importance of digital literacy for students, upholding strong accreditation standards for online programs and providing really robust support services for online learners. It's not enough to just throw some lectures online and call it a day.
Yeah, you need careful planning and intentional design to create those engaging and interactive learning experiences even in that virtual setting.
And this is where the importance of connection and community, which we've been talking about, comes in even more strongly. Colleges really need to find creative ways to foster a sense of belonging among their online students, just as they do for their on-campus students.
So things like virtual study groups, online forums, or even just regular check-ins from professors and advisors.
Right.
It's about making sure those students don't feel lost in the system and that they have the support they need.
And it's a challenge that goes beyond just online learning. It's something all colleges and universities need to be thinking about as they move forward in this ever-evolving world of higher ed.
So as we start to wrap up our deep dives, what are your final thoughts on this collection of articles?
For me, the biggest takeaway is that higher education is at a really important turning point. There are some big challenges ahead, but also incredible opportunities for positive change. And at the center of it all is the enduring value of a college education. Whether someone is looking for career advancement, to expand their knowledge, or even just for personal growth, higher education offers a unique path for transformation.
I completely agree. And it's been so interesting to see how the theme of connection keeps coming up as such a crucial factor in student success, whether it's through family support, alumni networks, or even AI systems that are designed to provide more personalized guidance.
It really underscores the importance of that human element in education. It's a good reminder that learning isn't just about taking in information. It's about engaging with ideas and with people in a meaningful way.
And on that note, I think it's time to bring this deep dive to a close.
Until next time.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. AI's role in shaping how students experience college admissions, the changing world of college admissions, and even how technology like CRMs and OPMs are impacting things behind the scenes.
Right.
But it feels like there's this one missing piece that we haven't really talked about yet.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We've talked about how these forces are changing higher ed, but what does it all mean for our listeners out there? How can they use these insights to navigate their own journeys, whether they're students, parents, or even educators themselves?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture stuff, but really it's about how this information can be used practically. What would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
If I had to sum it all up in one key idea, it would be this. Connection is everything.
Oh, wow.
We've seen this over and over in our conversation. Family support alumni networks, even the possibility of AI creating more personalized learning, it always comes back to that human connection.
I'm really feeling that. It seems like in a world that's so digital and can sometimes feel isolating, that sense of belonging and community is even more important than ever.
It really is. And I think this has implications for everyone involved in higher education. For students, it means being proactive about seeking out those connections, joining clubs, participating in study groups, reaching out to mentors.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask for help and build your own support network.
And for parents and educators, it's about acknowledging how important it is to encourage those connections.
Yes.
Whether it's through getting families involved, creating welcoming environments for students, or even using technology to make it easier for people to connect and mentor each other. It's all about making sure that no one feels lost or alone in the system.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. And the exciting thing is we're seeing more and more colleges and universities really embracing this idea.
Yeah.
They're putting more resources into student support services, strengthening their relationships with their alumni, and exploring new ways to use technology to make learning more engaging and connected.
It's like higher education is going through a transformation, realizing that success isn't just about grades and test scores, but about creating a sense of belonging and purpose for everyone.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
It is.
It's a reminder that even with all the changes and uncertainty, higher education still has that amazing power to change lives and shape the future.
So true. I think that's a perfect place to wrap up this deep dive. It's been such an interesting journey exploring these complex and interconnected ideas that are shaping the future of higher education.
It really has. And I hope it's given everyone listening some food for thought as they think about their own path in this ever-changing world.
Until next time, everyone, stay curious and keep diving deep into these important topics.